we are going to take a look at this Linkswell Gen 6 T-style radio with the 12.1 inch screen. This specific version is compatible with a 2018 and up Jeep Wrangler JL, even though the box does say JT, and a 2020 and up Jeep Gladiator JT. That version is correct. The packaging itself looks to be pretty high-end for the most part. It says exactly what it is. The main reason for choosing this version is it gives the factory fit and finish like the box says. We're going to be able to integrate our start-stop button. It's going to include the auto start-stop for the car, hazard lights, AC control, and it's going to give us the big functionality of wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. Let's see what we have in the box. It looks like we have some warranty cards. Let's see what we have in this box. Looks like a cleaning cloth, the connectors we're going to need for the install, wiring harnesses, mounting brackets, the chime unit, and some Allen keys. Move that off to the side. Some very good foam packaging. Put this over. Looks like we just have a few connections that we need to make on the back. Since this unit is supposed to be plug and play, it should hopefully be a very simple install. Looks like this section is for a SIM card to give yourself mobile data. However, you can connect to your smart device or iPhone or Android device to get that data as well. Peel off this blue film. So far, this looks like a very nice upgrade from the default Uconnect system that came with my Jeep. Alright, let's take a look and see if there's anything else in this box. That is it for the unboxing. Next we will move over to doing the removal of the factory Uconnect system and move on to the install. I'll check with you in a minute. A test of what the Jeep Wrangler 2020 model stereo looks like now that I have. It's very important to note that we are going to disconnect the negative battery terminal on the Jeep, doing so with a 10mm socket before we start doing the install. For our tools in this Jeep, we are going to use a combination of these pry tools and an impact drill. And we'll probably have a need for this pick tool in order to disconnect some connectors. Alright, for the first part of this install, we're going to need to remove this panel here. We definitely don't want to break anything, so don't go too crazy on it, but we are going to need to apply a little bit of force to undo the clips. There we go. Alright, now on the back here, we're going to want to undo a couple of these clips. Nice and easy. And the clip for the start-stop button. We will need to reuse this start-stop button to put into the new unit. And we will go over that when we get there. I have seen a few places where we may need to retain these white little clips as attachment points, so just in case. Looks like we didn't break anything, so we should be good on that. We're going to set that aside here. The next thing we need to do is remove this bezel, and there should be a few screw clips right under here. Set those here, and now we should be able to pop off this bezel. There we go. Nice and easy. Slip that down here, and now we have 4 more screws to undo. These appear to be the same size screws as the other 2 that we just removed, so we don't need to worry about those getting mixed up. Alright, and the head unit pulls out, and we now have a handful of connectors to disconnect. Nice and easy there. We need to undo this guy here, the big clip that holds in the radio. Let's go ahead and use this pick. Release that. We have that guy off. Let's make sure not to lose it. Put that back in place. Alright, so on this clip, we have to press in and pull up, and that pops out. Gives us a little more wiggle room to remove these other 2 clips. That guy. And that one. And we now have the factory Uconnect head unit removed. Alright, jumping around here, we're actually going to move into removing the start-stop button from the factory dash panel. And we're going to do that with a 5.5mm socket. and we have it removed. Set that aside, and we are going to grab the new Linkswell unit, and it sets right in there. I'm going to start these by hand to start. Alright, that's all three of them tight. Now, it looks nice and beautiful. Alright, we are going to start with this main factory wiring harness that we are going to just start connecting into the other connectors. So this one's pretty obvious, the nice big large power brick. There's only one way to plug it in, and that appears to be this way. And we're going to clamp this down and have that connection made. Next, let's see here. For the wire connections, it's important to show that this specific connector shows audio output. We have two options here on these white connectors. One is without factory amp input, and this one is with factory amp. This Jeep that I am installing on does not have a factory amp, so we are going to plug into this connector. Alright, next we are going to take our CAN bus connector, and there's only one that it can plug into, so we are going to take a gander. And that looks to be this guy here. We are plugged in. Next, we have this here that has a connector that'll fit right in here. We're in. Plug this back into the other side of the CAN bus connector. With that set, we're also not going to be utilizing any of the wires that have these gel caps on them, so we'll probably end up taping those up. Next, we are going to take these camera inputs and we are going to plug it into the one that says reverse AHD output, and that is going to get plugged into the factory camera input. And we'll leave that guy hanging down here. This here is our camera retention box that allows us to keep using the factory camera input. Alright, now we have this USB cable that's going to allow us to retain the factory USB connectors in the Jeep. We're going to plug this end into the end coming from the car. That's good. This end will plug into the back of the head unit, and this end I'm going to probably put in the glove box to allow us to have a wired connection somewhere if needed. This cable we have is going to be our antenna adapter. Just going to connect this gray one into the white cable that is coming from the Jeep. And that is clicked in. Alright, now other connectors that we have here, we have two 4G antennas, a Wi-Fi antenna, that these ones we will most likely end up sticking to the back of this unit here. We also have a GPS unit. This one will probably end up getting routed somewhere along this channel here and probably going to rest somewhere back up on top of the Jeep, just so we have a good signal. We do have this chime connector that we are going to connect to the speaker output connection. Now I am going to start connecting all of these to the back of the unit, and I will update once it is installed. Checking, we've got a few other connectors here. We have one that is labeled to climate, so we are looking at the climate connector here in the Jeep. Have that connected now. Looks like we're down to two other connectors to get in. We have this red one, and we have this blue and red one. One of the pieces that we are also going to do is run this microphone to give us a lot of cable, and I'm planning to potentially just run that and have it run somewhere up here on my Jeep. It does connect with this white or yellow harness that we are going to connect right there. Alright, so earlier I mentioned that I was probably going to be installing this chimes box down here. The cable wasn't super long enough, and it was actually really difficult to try to get some of the wires through this little section, and I'd seen a few people had put theirs up in this location up there. So now I have the chime box there. I have the Wi-Fi antenna here. I have a 4G antenna here, a 4G antenna here, and then the GPS antenna is right there. Even though I did mention earlier that I was hoping to put the GPS antenna here. I had seen that the closer to the windshield the better, so we went there, which is roughly 3 inches from the windshield. We will see how that goes. If I end up needing to move it, I'll move it, but we're going to start out here. As I mentioned earlier, these little white clips do need to be removed from the old harness, the old trim piece, and they are going to be put on to places like this on the new one. Alright, I'm sure this could have been prettier, but I went ahead and I just kind of wrapped up all the cables that were 4G antennas, Wi-Fi antennas, the extra cable from the GPS antenna. I wrapped some cable ends like the microphone so those didn't split up as we're trying to shove everything in. Wrapped up the raw ends of the video S cables. Connections here are wrapped together. So for now, I'm going to try to stuff all of this into there. Wish me luck. Alright, so I've been living with this new infotainment system for about 2 weeks now, and I figured I could do a pretty decent review on it. This is primarily going to be from a Apple device connectivity standpoint. Most of the ones I've seen online are all Android based, so figured I would do a review from that point. So first we'll see how quick it takes to start up. So it came on pretty quick, and I have the CarPlay set to auto launch, and it connects pretty dang quick. which is much better than some of the other devices that I've had. Turn that down and play. It's pretty touch responsive. I've got no issues with that. I am running a beta of iOS 27, if that makes a difference, but it's pretty quick. We have the touch controls for the climate control. That connects it's pretty responsive. Then I would say the only complaint that I have so far for my backup camera is when it connects the first time, it does take a second for it to go from a black screen and it has the reverse lines to a actual image. And then I would say probably about 3 seconds into reversing, it freezes for half a second and then goes back to functioning. I'm not quite sure what that issue is yet. I've tried looking for some firmware updates, but I haven't found any yet, so I'm hoping that at some point a firmware release comes out and fixes that. I have played around with some of the car settings. I had to move around a few of my icons, so I added the CarPlay, car settings, the camera, and climate control buttons to the front, because I think there's 2 to 3 different settings sections, and the car settings is the one I care, I suppose, about most, primarily for things like taking my doors off of my Jeep and having to set that setting to no doors. So we just come in here and go to doors off, and my doors are off, and that makes sure that my lights turn off when the car's off. One of my favorite settings with this is, by default, it has the auto start stop turned off. So now I don't have to deal with that annoyance every time I come to a stop. I generally have my climate control on auto, so the start stop hit me all the time. With my wife's Jeep Wrangler, her start stop never turned on because she just always had her air conditioning on full blast, which I suppose that's one way to get around it, but having this off by default is great. I will say a lot of the features I haven't played with a ton in this system, primarily because I am a CarPlay user and CarPlay takes over immediately. By doing that, the Wi-Fi is always turned off, so I can't get a good read on some of these features, and being a iPhone user, I honestly have not had a urge to play with any of the like Gmail apps, Google Maps. I just go straight for CarPlay features. It is worth noting during the install, I would try to probably, if you ever decide you're going to add a SIM card, to have some network connectivity with Wi-Fi off. So we have up here where it's got the cellular signal bars with no signal. I would potentially try to run that cable as close to the glove box as possible, so that way if you want to swap in and out a SIM card without having to take the whole head unit off, which would be a major pain in the butt, if I get bored enough in the future, I'll probably take it apart and try to move that cable down that way, just so if I decide in the future I want to add that SIM card, I have that ability to easily do so. One of the other nice features that I enjoy is with the stock Uconnect system. I had issues where my steering wheel buttons would stop functioning, so I couldn't change songs. The volume pretty much always worked, but I could never switch songs. Maybe 1 out of 10 times it would work. I have not had that issue with this system, which is very helpful. Previously, I had been using some of these dongles to give me wireless CarPlay, and this one connected great, but then occasionally I'd be going for like a 2-mile drive and it would disconnect 4 different times in between there. but the connection signal itself was strong. It like always connected. This particular one would always, it would work great when it worked, but I would go for quite a while where I'd have to forget it from my phone and repair it to make it connect. So these were not the best option, but so far this has been great. It connects immediately with before I'm out of the driveway. It's connected to my phone, which is great. So having not played with Android for a long time, I just set up the Play Store with my account, and I downloaded an app called Jeep Wallpapers. So I'm going to see if we can set the wallpaper to something a little cooler than stock. Worth noting, it did pop up saying when I added this to my Google account, it is actually a Google Pixel 3 XL, if that means much to anyone. Well, let's take a look here if there's anything cool. I'm sure at some point I could just add a picture of my own car to the wallpaper and be just fine. But I am curious what we get here. For time's sake, let's just do something like that here. Let's see what that gives us. Ooh, that's ugly. I wonder if we can adjust that. What does that one do? Oh, kind of boring. Alright, so after playing around with it a bit, I was able to get a pretty decent wallpaper on here after going through the crop settings. I changed my widgets a little bit, added a live weather application, which is helpful. So a lot of this stuff I probably won't use a ton, but it's nice to have a different look when I'm not in CarPlay. Speaking of that, let's launch that. Looking good. And I would say so far, after playing around with everything, I would easily give this a 9 out of a 10. I would recommend it to probably just about anyone, especially if you had the small little Uconnect stereo that the Jeep came with.